And welcome, everyone. And thank you so much for tuning into the Temple Hayes podcast on Fire for Life. I'm so grateful for the commitment all these years. We've been together about 15 years under different branding, but yet having the same dreams and passions and different intentions for a better world. That's for sure. Well, I'm delighted that today my sister is on the show with us. We're not biological sisters, but we are indeed, from the moment we met, our eyes caught across the room. We are soul sisters for life. And that's all there is to it. Christie Hardwick, thank you so much for being here and saying yes.
Oh, you're so welcome. Absolutely.
I just
Sisters
tell you,
and
you're
soul.
just on fire. I mean, and I repeat it often because I just keep living in it, keep stepping into it. Howard Thurman that
This
says,
girl is on
on fire.
fire. That's right.
This girl is
Girl
on
is on
fire.
fire. That's right.
But I love that statement where he says, stop asking what the world needs and ask yourself what makes you come alive.
Yes.
And when we were serving together in Pinellas County, I know you have homes in Italy and California, and you're one of those, you take the word world serious and to heart. But it's like you've been involved in so many things as a change agent, as a leadership coach. You've created leaders, hundreds and hundreds of them, and my goodness. So, have you always been a person that you knew your calling was so much greater than just Dolly Parton's 9 to 5 and that kind of thing? Have you always felt that deep passion?
I don't know if it was a passion for a particular way of doing things or being. I just found myself always flowing forward.
Mm,
Um, when I started in high tech, when I was in my early 20s, I had no intention of going to high tech. I was going to be a teacher.
mm,
I went to Santa Clara University and got an undergraduate in humanities, and it was a pre-teaching, pre-law. And the next year was going to be the student teaching, but I found myself a single parent with 2 children and said, I can't afford to be a teacher, which is very sad, but it was
mm,
the case in that
mhm.
moment. So I went into technology because that's what was around the corner. I lived in Silicon Valley, so I just said, okay, I guess go do this. But when I got there, it was me. So I had this energy for creativity and to do something positive. So I started to move through the ranks because it turned out that in those environments, people vibrating at a really high level was not that common. Everybody was
Mm.
thinking about, I guess, getting to the next job or something. I just wanted to learn and just chew up life. So I was very successful inside corporations, and not by accident. It just was my nature, the way I was, voracious learner, reader, you know, um, person who's an innovator. I moved from starting my first job, and I was managing people within 2 years of coming out of college.
Mhm.
So that it happened. And then it continued to happen for the 20 plus years I was in technology.
Well, I would call you an old soul, not related to the years of your life this round. I was talking to someone not long ago that her husband was a scientist, and this isn't exactly how she said it, but it's a wise person learns to ask the right questions. An innovative difference maker questions the answers. And that's
Hmm.
innate with you.
Hmm.
That's why the initial team, it was so important to have you as the Dean of Thought Leadership on ILLI, the Institute for Leadership and Lifelong Learning. It's because of that inner wisdom, that discernment. Um, do you find that that's something we can teach people, or is that the kind of quality that you either have it or you don't have it?
Hmm. I think you can develop systems thinking. I came in with it. So one of the reasons why I moved forward in leadership positions and organizations is because I could see the whole and I
Mm,
was connecting dots where people weren't necessarily connecting dots. So sometimes I felt uncomfortable with it because I'd be promoted above the people that I was working with. It happened to me often
Hmm.
because I was seeing what they weren't seeing, and I was finding solutions where people weren't necessarily finding solutions. And I found it fascinating. It's like, well, if we put these two things together, I think it's going to be a greater thing. And if we move over to
Hmm.
the left, to the right here, if we organize it this way and use this process, what would happen over here? And I just loved learning that way. And so it was natural for me. I did notice that in my years of hiring people, and I probably, hired a couple hundred people in my career, and people came with this creativity, this innovation. The people who came with other skills didn't often weren't often able to cross over into that.
Hmm.
But I noticed that if they had some art, some way of expressing themselves, and I sometimes would bring that in. So I was a kind of a weird, they'd call him a weird executive. I had a dancer, teacher, storyteller from Malawi, Africa, come in to teach my team about leadership from a body standpoint, how you
Hmm.
show up, right? And he was teaching about the elements. He was saying, some people are air, some people are water, and some people are earth. And you put them in positions where they can be in their element. And if you put people in the wrong position, they'll look like they're failing, but it's just because they're in the wrong place for the
Hmm.
type of person that they are. So we were learning about that. And I noticed that if I was trying to get someone who was really an earth person to be air, it just wasn't working. They were not in their head that way. They would
Hmm.
need to get things done. They wanted to push things. They wanted to actually touch them. They wanted to shift them. And then when you move them into the right place, then they were able to move. So I was, I'm kind of an air person, and thinking is was everything for me. But get me to do administrative tasks, I'd fail. So
Hmm.
I had the best administrative support on the planet, and they helped me to be fully successful because you need all of it
Yes.
in a leadership position. So I'd say that probably anything can be learned to some extent, but some of it we come in with a posture and a way of being.
Hmm. I love that. I know that often people would come into my circle and they would say, "Oh, I've been wanting to be part of this community, and with so and so leaving, I want you to tell me what he was doing because, I want to be here and I want to do what he's doing." And I would say, and they would always look at me like, "What?" I would say, "I'm not going to tell you what he was doing."
Mm-hmm,
Because if he loved what he was doing, he might have stayed. And
mm-hmm,
you're not
mm-hmm,
him. You're not
mm-hmm,
him.
mm-hmm,
And so evolution allows room and space of what is it that you're feeling after you're here for 3 months. So it would be a good way to bring in your own talents and your own energy. It kind of drives some people crazy. But that's the
mm-hmm,
same kind of idea as parenting, isn't it? It's
mm-hmm.
that there is an evolving energy that the kids now, they are different than the ones before. There's the basics, there's the fundamentals, but yet there's room allowed for, so many different conversations. Well, one of the things that I really love about you is, first of all, your ability to go deep, go into it, you know, as far as us being thought leaders, we are about owning our shadow. We
Mm-hmm.
are about that we either own our feelings or our feelings own us. It surprises me, that little kids are taught this with piano music in the background. I am my sadness, I am my joy, I am that. And they just go, and these are just my feelings. But somehow in adulthood, people get tattooed and programmed to, well, you're better, you're more spiritual if you're positive. You can be fake. I don't get that. But it's like,
Mm-hmm.
it's like, oh no, that's negative. It's like, no, it's about, being a human being. I know that we have found great medicine between us, sharing these kind of ideas. And I loved your book. You were on the show 3 or 4 years ago about radical self-tenderness and how nurturing your soul can help heal the world. How is that going? And
Mm.
what were some of what was the feedback that you got? Or I imagine some people had an awakening, like, well, Christie says, so I need to really look at that.
Hmm. And it's something that it's continual work, like all of our
Hmm.
work, right? So when I
Yes.
wrote the book is because I was terrified of the idea of tenderness because of the vulnerability of being tender and being tender with yourself.
Mm.
I continue to work with that because tenderness to me is a quality that's different than anything else. It's not the same as kindness, not the same as self-care for me. It's a quality of absolute surrender to love and tenderness toward yourself. Because in my experience, the only way I can offer that an open hearted love being is that if I'm offering that in myself.
Mm.
And it's the hardest. I am my harshest critic. I am my hardest judge. I am the
Mm.
one, I don't need the world to judge anything because I can take care of that all myself.
Mm. Right.
And because I do that, I wrote this book for myself and for others to say, but what if I was tender with me? What would happen? What could happen? What could
Mm.
happen on my watch? What could happen inside of me? What would it actually affect in my heart space? How much more spaciousness would I have in me if I was tender? Because the opposite is being not tender. And there were some teachings that I had in family of origin and other teachings that would say, what is it? No pain, no gain, right?
Yes,
Be
yes.
rough
Yeah.
on yourself, be tough, discipline, get done. So I had my dukes up and I was really good at that. I could box, anyone verbally
Hmm.
and win the argument. So I had that down. I had a sword of verbal acuity, and it didn't serve me when it came to my self-talk. Because if I could use that externally, I was going to use it internally.
Mm.
Whatever way your posture is towards the world is to posture towards yourself. So I have continued to work on a gentle, tender posture toward myself, forgiveness, acceptance, surrender to what the feelings are. You just talked about all the different feelings we can have in life, and people who work with me as a leadership development coach will say, "Do you get angry? Do you get this?" They because I arrive having done some work to
Hmm.
be completely present for them, to be able to absorb and listen and witness, and to provide some feedback. And I say, of course, it arises in me the same as it arises in you. The difference is it doesn't take me for a ride for any length of time
Mm.
because
I
I've
love that.
learned,
Let's pause on that.
yeah,
Of course, I experience it. It just doesn't take me for a ride. That's powerful.
yes,
That's a quote right there, everyone, by Christie
yeah,
Hardwick. Write it down. But no, that's very powerful. Yes.
because if it takes you for a ride, then it's in the driver's seat, right?
Hmm.
It's determining who you're going to be.
Hmm.
And I remember the amazing Jill Bolte Taylor who wrote the book My Stroke of Insight. And she talks about being a neuroscientist and having had a stroke. She watched herself go offline
Hmm.
and she watched herself over the years come back online. But what she learned was things like anger and rage and all the different feelings that we have that are really powerful and important and necessary actually run a circuit through us. And it's only about 90 seconds,
Mm.
only about 90 seconds. And then we're done with it. But as human beings, we rehook it. We rehook it with our
Hmm.
thoughts and
Hmm.
stay angry and stay enraged. It's a natural impetus for us to say, ah, something hurt. Ouch. I need to deal with that right now. But it doesn't mean we have to deal with it with the anger. The anger
Mm.
was just the notification. It was just saying, oh, something happened here that I want to pay attention to. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. I feel some rage. I feel deep sadness. I feel some despair right now. Let myself feel that. Let the circuit run. And then it settles back into that place of wisdom. So you can then move from something other than that. It's not meant to move you unless you're moving out of the way of
Mm-hmm.
something chasing you, right?
Right.
It's not
Exactly.
meant to move you. But we
Right.
unfortunately use it that way. Sometimes we try to keep it alive because we think if I keep my anger, if I keep my rage, if I keep my despair, it's going to keep me moving forward. But what it actually does is just drain our energy.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And then there's the other group that go, it's not okay for me to have it. So
Right.
the path of resistance, so the attraction of the continuation like Velcro of bringing in people that anger us even more,
Hmm.
until we actually deal with it. And working with the students I coach in shamanism, it's like for me, one of the biggest aha moments was learning how to keep it out here, not in here, not in my
Hmm.
gut, but it's here, it's in my aura field. I'm
Hmm.
well aware of it. I recognize it. I see it. I can use Wayne Dyer as the silent witness, his
Hmm.
approach, and yet it's out here. I'm not bringing it inside my being, and that I have found to be, well, at first it was a very difficult practice, but it has been, extremely helpful. You were talking about that. It reminded me of when I interviewed before the board for the St. Petersburg role in 2003. And, being a reverend, people were being overly kind and respectful. So one of the board members said, well, can you go back to a time like, like years ago? Like, can you go
Hmm.
back to like a time? Could you
Hmm.
possibly remember? If you feel comfortable talking about it, this time that you got angry, and how
Hmm.
did you handle it? And I cracked up and I said, "You mean day before yesterday?" When
Yes,
I
there you go.
somebody was flying in my neighborhood and almost hit my dog. Oh yeah. So this
Hmm.
is what happened. But it's hysterical, this aspect of ourselves. And I love that, don't let it take you for a ride. Well, I've observed in your work, amazing work that continues, so powerful. So many people look to you for thought leadership because that's who you are and your expression. It's that energy that you carry, that integration, if you will. Um, do you feel that when you went on the journey and you walked in the areas where the movie Selma was filmed, did that change you? And I mean, it seems like a kind of a
Hmm.
silly question,
Hmm.
but I'm just getting the guidance
Hmm.
that
Not a
that's a
silly question at all.
powerful
Yeah.
that's a
Hmm.
powerful thing. I feel that changed you somehow.
Absolutely. And when you mentioned Selma, so I avoided the South as a geographic area my entire life until
Okay.
literally, I guess it would be now, excuse me, 7 or 8 years ago, maybe. Let's see.
Okay.
I was in St. Pete for 3 or 4, and before that. So, okay, I'm 65 years old, and I finally went to the South when I was probably, 58 or so.
Hmm.
Okay. So, a lot of time, a lot of travel. You know me as a world traveler.
Oh
I
yeah,
have been so many
definitely.
places, right? Not in this country. So, in the United States, I avoided the South. And I want to mention it because I have done so many other things that are don't match with that. But there
Okay.
was so much feeling in me about what the South meant and how the South played its part in terms of oppression of people who look like me that I thought it's not a safe place.
Mm.
It's not safe for me. I had a few experiences where, for example, when I was an executive in the year 2000, a person was sitting with me and she was from the South and she said, I never sat next to a black person before.
Oh my gosh.
And I just didn't know what to do with that because I was
No.
actually the senior executive who was hosting this event. Hundreds of people there, people sitting at tables. The room went completely quiet. And I remember feeling out of body, like, what are you going to do with this? And
Right.
I literally just looked at her and said, well, how is it? And then,
Oh
people
my
got to
gosh.
laugh, right?
Right, right.
Um, but I remember feeling like, wow, I mean, how can that
Mm.
be? So it even just instilled further fear. So it wasn't until, like 2018 or something, I don't remember when I was 17, that I actually decided I wasn't going to be a prisoner of my own fear anymore. And as a citizen, a global citizen, I wasn't going to keep myself from the southern part of the United States.
Hmm. Was it a process, Christy, or Did
Once I
something
said that,
trigger it
hmm
or okay.
once I said that in myself, and it's just like in the background, always, we're always working on our own evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a place where I'm always searching to see what's blocked. Where is energy not moving?
Mm-hmm.
It was definitely not moving in that area.
Mm,
So I noticed it and was always, just working on contemplating. So once I said to myself, I'm not going to be a prisoner of this and I should be able to, some things started to happen. So the first thing that happened is a colleague of and friend of yours and who you introduced to many of the people that I met in the Science of Mind world, Simran Singh, was on the
mm-hmm.
magazine. And so I always get coaching each year from someone as I coach people. So I always walk my talk. And so I
Yep.
thought, oh, she seems like a good person to work with this year. So I contacted her, just signed up for some sessions, and didn't pay attention to anything detailed until it was time. So it was like a month out. It's like, oh, okay, I had this meeting with this woman. Let me see where this is. Charleston, South Carolina.
Right. Yeah.
And I said, what? So Spirit, working on my behalf because I had said I'm going to do this work, sent me to the epicenter of where most enslaved people were moved in.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it was.
Definitely. Yeah.
So there I am. I'm there. And, that was the beginning of saying, okay, well, and what's interesting, Temple, is that when I got to the airport, the first thing I was greeted with was this gorgeous display of the little church that had been, where people had been murdered by
Mm-hmm.
a gunman.
Absolutely. Yep.
Um, and they were memorializing each one of the people.
Mm,
So it was nothing but peace and love as I arrived in Charleston, expecting who knew what. So I got those messages. So from there, it gave me the courage to go on the path and say, okay, let me go and face this head on, because sometimes when you're afraid of something, you need to just be with it. And Brian Stevenson, the wonderful teacher who built the Equality and Justice Institute in Montgomery, Alabama, says get proximate. That's the word he uses, which I think is beautiful. So I got
mm-hmm.
proximate with my fear and this place. And actually, you're a person that I needed to call when I was there,
Mm-hmm.
because my body was so racked with pain over walking this bridge in Selma,
Mm,
over taking the walk from where enslaved people came off the boat to the place where they were auctioned off, from standing in the places where the chains were still, the little eyes are still there where the chains were hooked onto people's legs. And I literally couldn't get out of bed. And I had never had that experience before. And I called you. And I said, I can't move.
mm.
I'm in so
That's
much
right.
pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Talk
And
about
you,
vulnerable. Talk about
mm-hmm,
being vulnerable, this tower of energy that you are. And I'm not, my intention is not how many accolades I can give you today, but it really is about this authentic person that you are that is, um, there's people that write books and there's people that live their books. Christie Hardwick is the person that you live your book, and that's what I've always aspired to be. Is wherever I am in whatever part of the world, I'm like the same, not
mm-hmm,
much different, maybe a little silly, but my languaging, my intention, and you are such a role model of that. That there you are in Charleston, South Carolina, working with Simran Singh, who is lovely and has gone through her own journey of that, from Indian to a small town in the Carolinas. So, and you can't move. What do you feel that was leading to in that time?
clearing.
Mm,
I have a prayer constant that is always to remove any obstacles,
mm-hmm,
remove obstacles to love, remove
mm-hmm,
obstacles to being a channel. So even if I don't know exactly what they are, I'm going to get support on that.
mm-hmm,
And this was the big one. Being a woman who is Black and a lesbian in the United States of America has with it attendant experiences. and comes with it some gifts that are huge and some challenges that are huge.
Of
So
course.
I wanted to be able to still be a free channel, even though I was carrying some of the things that cause a lot of friction and difficulty, especially in our country and other places in the world. I wanted to be a free Black woman who loves another woman. And that's a big order.
Mm-hmm.
And to be that is because that's who I am and that's who I'm being in this life right now. So for me to be authentic, I had to face anything that was in the way. And this facing of the South and facing of my fear of racism, facing of my fear of people who hate um, for reasons that for me make no sense because of the color of
Mm-hmm.
my skin, which I think is beautiful, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was really something I had to work through. I didn't want to hate them back. I didn't want to fear them. I wanted to transform this sense of fear into awe, which is what I was able to do. So I arrived feeling some anger, some rage, some frustration, some fear. I left with a sense of, wow, are my people magnificent? The people I came from, look
Mm,
at what they were able to overcome. Look at what they've done in spite of all the attention toward their degradation and their oppression. Look how they've risen, how amazing we are. I'm still sad for what happened
mm-hmm.
to my ancestors, some of which are another line in story is that I happen to be a Cherokee freedman by way of my great grandfather, because my great grandfather was enslaved by the Cherokee. Another layer to the story. But I think of what was overcome
Mm-hmm.
for me to be in a situation where I can be
Mm-hmm.
in this country, be who I am, prosper, and thrive. So I was able to transform that closed, scared place in my heart into something that's open and is in awe of what's possible.
Mm. It is incredible how, we've talked about this many times, and I know that, I talk about this in my own book, When Did You Die? And coming up on 10 years soon, there will be some kind of repackaging or still dying over here, but still living brightly, who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, the things that happen to us that were brought in, it's like they describe us and yet they don't have to define us. But I think of people like you and me in the early days of having these basic training skills where you start out in your life knowing that there's a whole lot of reasons that people aren't really for you or don't like you or, judge you or, whatever. And so what I'm seeing in my own circle is because of those things that had to be faced as a gay woman, alcoholic woman. No, I don't want to be a Southern Baptist, deep rooted, spend my life talking about hell woman, all of those things. It's like even with the recent events of families feeling like they want to separate, because of what's going on in our country. Um, I've found it to be very humbling, when somebody will call me for advice or a thought about that, about I don't think I want to be with my family this holiday or whatever. And I'm able to say, what's your value? What's your biggest value? Oh, my biggest value is family. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if that's the case, what are you going to do with that? Because
Mm-hmm.
that was one of my biggest values. And you're not 14. I was. I
Mm-hmm.
would go to these events, and the people that used to give me a hug no longer would come over to my area. The people that would look at me would no longer look. If I can do that, I think you can do this. because
Hmm.
love will heal. It will build the bridge.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I find that that is, I don't want to say music to someone's ears, but it's great medicine
Hmm.
because, we live in a world where sometimes, unless people like you and me and others put it in front of somebody's face and put a name, my name is simple, my name is Christie, this was my walk, it's just conceptual,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? But it's a great opportunity to be able to use our stories of disconnect,
Hmm.
that how we walk through it to connect, and then hopefully touching a few lives along the way of the
Yeah.
value of connection, because the other 80% of whatever one might feel their differences are with another human being, there is that richness that we all are striving for, to be loved,
Yes,
right?
absolutely. To be loved, to
Hmm.
love and to love well. And as you know, that's the kind of second subject I took on in myself, from dealing with radical self-tenderness to, what am I here for?
Yeah.
And asking myself that question, to what end? Because I have striven for, accolades, for accomplishments, for jobs, for
Mhm.
careers, and accomplished many, many things. But every time I moved the bar just moved further. And I
Yes.
ultimately realized there's a horizon out there which I'll never reach because it's unending and it'll
Right.
always be there. And then you have to go back and say, well, but what is the thing that really matters? Do you talk about
Hmm.
values, right? Love. And it's such a, easy word to throw out there, but I spent time defining it for myself. And for me, it's the energy of the universe. It's what runs everything.
Hmm.
It's my life. It's my breath. It's the thing itself. It's source. It's, you call it nature. You can call it whatever you want to call it. I don't think it cares what you call it. It is the thing itself. And if I'm here, I need to be here in service to that. That's what I've concluded. I need to be here in service to love, in service to life. And that doesn't mean about like what job I'm doing or what I'm volunteering for. It means that the highest level of my expression is being love itself.
Hmm.
And it means that it doesn't mean I'm not having a human experience. It means the filter through which I'm going to decide, discern, and act is going to be on the basis of love. And
Hmm.
it doesn't allow for exclusion. It doesn't allow for separation. It doesn't allow me to have distance from. It just asks me to be in the juice, the field, the space of love at all
Hmm.
times. Not an easy assignment. I fail it, daily, but I continually dust myself off and continue down the road, um, and making a new and different effort at demonstrating
Well,
love
that's what aiming
as
high
me.
is always
Hmm.
about, right?
Hmm.
Aiming high in, as you said, not trophies and awards and certificates, but aiming high towards the continuing expansion of oneself. So, your new book, just as you're all tuning in, get a pencil. It's to what end? And you can also enter Christie Hardwick, Hardwick. You can enter her name in Amazon, and her former book, which is still a very notable bestseller, Radical Self Tenderness: How Nurturing Your Soul Can Help Heal the World. And her new one is coming out next week. So it's a perfect time for the holiday, holy day, Kwanzaa, Hanukkah, Christmas, solstice,
Hmm.
whatever
Hmm.
you're into. If you're into all those things, it's a perfect gift, to share. Now, with the book, To What End, are you, I haven't had the pleasure of reading it yet. So I love the title. Is to what end are you asking seekers to delve into? At what end are you willing to make adjustments or sacrifice? Or or are you meaning to the what end of your memory of life, or
Mhm, mhm.
share that
Yeah,
because I just
yeah,
love hearing you talk.
it, it's an inquiry. It's an
Okay.
inquiry because I'm saying I woke up with a question that happens to me sometimes. I wake up with a question and it's like, well, to what end? What am I here for? To what
Mm-hmm.
end am I here? Because we are always
Mm-hmm.
having means to an end. We use that term, a means to
Yes.
an end. To what end?
Mm-hmm.
To what end? And as I said, in my career and in my life, first it was survival. Just I was 19 years old and I had twin children. It was like, I'm just going to get through this,
Wow.
feed these babies and, finish school and all those kind of things. And then you start to have a career and then it's like, well, I just get a bigger, better job and more money and get a more solid house and get the kids into good daycare. And, you have different kind of things. And then it's like, well, I actually want to express myself a little bit and do some creative things. And I started to sing and perform and do things. And it's wonderful, that unfolding.
Mm.
But at some point you ask yourself the question, I have I'm hopeful, maybe 30 more summers or something. And to what end am I here? And is there an end for me in sight? I did conclude in the book that there isn't really an end, but there is um, something to strive for. And that's
Mm-hmm.
that's the idea of loving deep and loving wide. And what that really means for me is there isn't anything else more important.
Mm.
And nothing as I go through the exploration, I couldn't find any other thing that I could place above that idea. So then that means for me, as a warrior of love and light, then my work is get out of the way, open your heart wider, be a greater channel. Anything that's in the way. So this has been happening all along that I've been getting out of my own way, out of love's way. And it continues to be the work. So when I find myself in judgment, when I find myself in fear, when I find myself in anything that's not love, I have a reason why I want to go somewhere else, which is to open wider because it's so powerful that it can wash through anything that's in the way. And
Mm.
what I have ultimate faith in is that as a channel, as I let it flow through me, only good occurs. Only good occurs. The only thing that's not good occurring is something that's an appearance because of me putting my foot on the hose because I'm afraid of how much is coming through and I'm not, I don't feel confident about it. And I did that as a human, but it's okay because the experimentation of just letting it flow through and seeing what happens in your life is a beautiful thing. So I'm looking forward to learning with everyone in this book to what end of how to love deep, how to love wider, how to let it flow, how to allow it to be heaven on earth through each one of us. And that's the thing that I've called myself to do. And it's an inquiry I hope to have many conversations with people about. So, what do you think? To what end are you here?
Mm.
And it's not about your purpose, not about you being an artist or those kind of things, but for what? For the sake of
Mm-hmm.
what?
Mm-hmm. And going through major change is one of the best things.
Mm-hmm,
If people say, well, I'm not really sure, um, like contacting an astrologer not long ago, kind of always had one. And he goes, tell me what's going on. I've never met him. He knows nothing about me. Um, you know, tell me what's going on. I said, I'm not telling you that. I got all that mastered of what I
yeah, yeah, yeah.
feel, how I feel I might know me, how I feel I might categorize me, how I might share about me. You tell me what's going on because I just want to be that vulnerable to be wide open of, what is possible. So to do like you and Jane have done to, move to a foreign country so many months out of the year or to travel to do different things, to join different organizations, be part of different clubs or events where you aren't known for being the person that people believe you are, is so expansive. And so to me, it has been able to further my connection with myself of to what end and
Mm-hmm,
what matters at this particular time because we just like astrology we change and our houses and Pluto and
mm-hmm,
whatever
mm-hmm,
that
mm-hmm,
is changing, then what matters changes. And
mm-hmm.
we
Exactly.
get, I find people feel often they're comfortable with what they're comfortable about,
Hmm.
where really that's the real Velcro that sticks them in the inability to expand,
Hmm. Hmm.
right? Because when
Yeah.
you're raw and when it's like, oh, you're used to being this or that or
Hmm.
having the shingle on the door,
Hmm.
and now you're in another window and you're in another phase of dying so you
Hmm.
can be born.
Yeah.
It's invigorating.
It is.
It's
For
invigorating.
me, love has no future,
Mm-mm.
no past, no plans. It is just the present moment now. And as I trust more and more, then I am intuitively guided every day to the right next thing. But I don't have this attachment to, oh, I need to get here, here, and here, and here. For what?
Mm-mm.
For the sake of what?
Mm-mm. Right.
Wherever I go, I'm there. And wherever I go, as long as love is in me, as me, and through me, it's all good.
Mm-mm.
So there's a beginning of a level of freedom and surrender and lightness. There's a lightness happening. There's less
Yes.
to carry of I need to, I must, I got to get this done or that done, or this should happen or that should happen. It's more, how am I expressing love today?
Mm. Well, you brought a lot of love to our show today, and I am so grateful for who you are, your presence, as hundreds and hundreds and tens of hundreds and thousands of people have been through the years, my friend. How is the best way for people to get in touch with you? Which website do you prefer?
So I think actually getting in touch with me is easiest on Facebook because I use the medium as a public square and I
Me
look at
too,
Messenger all the
yes.
time.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm easy to be reached that way. My
Okay.
website is really focused on events, and then you can find me on Amazon with the book and the new book coming out. So Radical
Right.
Self Tenderness and To What End. Both of them are things that I think are worth a discussion and a contemplation because more tender people running around the world, more people in touch with what they're here for, um,
Absolutely.
can benefit the
Absolutely.
whole.
Well, thank you for living in the question of your life and for questioning the answers. You are such a blessing. It's been an honor to spend quality time with you today. And
Thank you.
and thank you for your heart. What a
You
gift.
too.
What
A
a
gift to
gift.
me.
Thank you everyone for tuning in. And just take a moment and click the share button and share it because there's so many people that want to hear this message. Thank you for being with us. It's so very grateful.